Hello everyone, a very warm welcome. My name is Prateek, and on behalf of Microsoft, lambdaTest, and Value Prospect, I welcome you all for this exclusive virtual workshop on resonance of end-to-end testing. Thank you very much for sparing your time and joining this workshop. Before we start, a few guidelines I would like to make you aware of. I would request all of you to please be on mute. The webinar is happening on Teams platform, so your names would be visible in the attendee list and the session would be recorded. Hope this is fine with all. We would be taking your questions during the Q&A session. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can post the same in the chat box or you can use the hand raise option. With this, we would like to welcome our keynote speaker for the day, Mr. Mayank Bhola, the co-founder and head of product at lambdaTest. Over to you, Mayank.
Thank you so much, Prateek, for the warm welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for all joining in this webinar. I'm going to share my screen, and from there we can start.
Mayank, it's visible.
Thank you so much. So before we actually start onto this webinar, I'll try to define what we mean by end-to-end testing. So there are lots of different kind of testing out there in the software testing world, in the automation. But the end-to-end actually means that the testing which is done from the end user's perspective on that similar device on which the user is going to consume the platform or the service. And end-to-end testing is like very close to our hearts because we at lambdaTest have been serving the community for like a couple of years now and have like great experience in delivering platforms and solutions to accelerate the end-to-end testing out there. So first of all, I'll try to see like why end-to-end testing is important and why does it matter. So first of all, the confidence in releasing. Any kind of testing apart from end-to-end testing cannot provide the confidence of the end user experience because and this is important because it could be that we are doing some unit test cases, we are doing some integration end test cases, but ultimately what matters to the user is the end experience. And end-to-end testing is the only way that we can have complete confidence on what we are releasing out there. Second is a user's perspective, because if we do not test on the end device the user itself is using, we'll never get to see the issues and experience and the glitches that the user is having. And why this is important? Because even though our platform or service is like very performant, it's feature rich, but ultimately if user is not able to get what he's seeking for in the platform, the whole effort goes into the vain. And that is why end-to-end testing actually provides feedback from the end user's perspective. And thirdly, while software development, the developers typically use a single device to actually develop and test it out in a very frequent manner. But ultimately, when the end audience is coming out from different backgrounds and from different geographies, it's very important that the cross-device experience is tested as well. Because when we actually do the testing while development or maybe some intra organization policies or processes, we typically actually miss out the goal of the software testing out there, and hence the end user experience actually suffers a lot because that is not currently being done over there. But in some recent years, there are lots of different arguments against as well as for the end-to-end testing. And these images are extracted out some very famous blogs out there from different organizations. I'm not sure you guys already have viewed them, but I'll try to actually explain like what they're trying to mention. So the problem is that the end-to-end testing is been there for like past 15 or 20 years, but there have been like very common complaints. And some of them are as follows: that first of all, the end-to-end testing is not fast enough. The problem is exactly because of its core functionality that we need to test it out from the end-to-end user experience. And that thing actually requires us to set up our infrastructure in such a manner that all the devices, all the service, and every other component is up and running. And that is why there is a hampering of the speed, which is why people do complain that the end-to-end testing is not fast enough. And how do you expect us to do end-to-end testing as a very frequent exercise? Secondly, the point comes regarding the reliability of end-to-end testing. And then if you already imagine that now that multiple components are involved, multiple services are involved, even if one service goes down, the entire end-to-end test case is like bound to be broken. And why this matters, because in this whole exercise of end-to-end testing, if anything is a failure, it gets very difficult for the end user to know that is it component that is failing, or it's my actual functionality that is breaking. Thirdly, it's about the isolation of the failures. Now, for example, we have a food delivery app or an airline booking app. If the end-to-end test breaks, it's actually difficult for the end users to determine which component got failed. Is it like microservice, or it like my database, or some like infra component out there? And people complain that the end-to-end testing is not able to tell about these failures. But obviously, everybody do recognizes that only end-to-end testing is able to simulate the end user experience, right? And similarly, on the third side, on the second image, it's a very common image over there, the internet. It's called the testing pyramid, and it tells that various different kind of testings that are being done. And as we move up from the unit to the end-to-end test cases, that testing becomes slow, hard, and like it's very difficult to maintain. And as we go from top to bottom, people say that the unit test cases are fast, these require less maintenance. So this is a dilemma out there for the software testing teams out there, because they do realize that end-to-end testing is the actual confidence gainer. But on the other hand, what about these issues? So these issues actually prevent from organizations to completely accept end-to-end testing as a part of their daily workflows. And then if we think about deeply about this problem, it's actually the platform that is missing the support, because everybody realizes that end-to-end testing is important, but then all the issues that we just saw, it's actually due to the lack of tooling as well as the platform. And this prompted us at lambdaTest to think around in this direction, that why can't the engineering marvels get to this point where the platform is smart enough to actually support the end-to-end testing? Because ultimately the end user wants that, but there are lots of hurdles in between. And most of these hurdles are not because of the end-to-end testing, it's because of the way end-to-end testing is presented out there. And maybe how end-to-end testing is like automated, or maybe how it's packaged out. So ultimately, all points boil down to the single problem that the platform itself is not very supportive, and that blames come onto the end-to-end testing. So let's talk more about these common rants and try to associate them with a platform. Now, people say that end-to-end testing is slow, but if you look at the other end, I mean, the world is moving very fast towards like high computing services. There's no dearth of computing power, memory, as well as the storage. So why that end-to-end testing is slow? It's because the platform itself is not designed in a manner to actually efficiently use all these services. Secondly, let's talk about the brittleness of the end-to-end test cases. Now, since end-to-end test case simulates everything from the end user's perspective, there are like a couple of ways in which things can be tested. Now, I'll try to take a very small example in terms of a web application. So everybody here is already aware about what HTML is. So for example, if I'm testing out a sign-up form and I've written an automation script that is going to load a web page, it's going to find out the sign input button and as well the input field, and it's going to input some data over there. Now, what could happen here is that tomorrow my front-end developer might change the locator of that input field. For example, they change the ID or they could change the class for that. And due to that, my end-to-end test is going to fail because ultimately it's not able to figure out where that input button is. And so that people do complain that the end-to-end test cases are very brittle, because a very small change can actually cause this entire end-to-end test suite to fail. Now, again, the platform today is not smart enough to tell like what exactly got wrong in this test case. The service providers actually just throw out the infra on the users, and the users are like forced to actually see all the logs, try to make sense out of like what went wrong. And after so much debugging, they get to know that it's actually not the failure of the test script, it's actually the way the source has changed. Third is about the affordability of the end-to-end testing. Now, end-to-end testing requires like so many things out there. For example, we need all the different kinds of browsers, all those versions, all those operating systems, all the end user mobile devices, and so on. Now, the problem is that it's very, very difficult for any organization to afford them. And obviously, there are some other platforms that are providing this on rent as well. The problem again here is that the platform itself, the way it's designed, it's actually consuming way more than it has to. And as the end result, users are forced to actually pay more. And not just that, expensiveness also manifests itself in some other aspects. For example, the amount of compute power, the amount of infra resources that are required to run these systems. Now, if with the efficient engineering, this all things can be made much more reasonable, because as you see that the CPU cost is getting down day by day. For the same compute power, for the same memory, we are going to pay less. So why still the end-to-end testing is expensive? It shouldn't be like that. And fourth is about the flakiness. Now, although flakiness is not very, very intrinsic toward the end-to-end testing, it's like common for all the testing, but end-to-end test cases are way more flaky. And the exact reason is again same. There are lots of components involved. And if one of these components fail, the test case starts to show some different results. Now, for example, the target virtual machine on which we are running the web browser to simulate a sign-up form, it could be the case that this compute power or the memory is low. And due to that, the page might take a little bit longer to load. Now, due to this very small transient condition, my entire end-to-end test set is going to suffer because of that. And again, what's here to blame is actually the platform and not the end-to-end test cases. So it was the problems that we saw before were actually like very, very small and the tip of the iceberg. But actual problem that people face at scale, I mean, when we talk about like more than 100 or 200 engineers, we have so many commits going on per hour, there's so many services. What happens with the end-to-end test case? Because the problems that we saw just previously were just tip of the iceberg. Now the problem aggravates to a huge lot of extent. For example, the complex workflows. Now you will have like so many end-to-end testing frameworks out there in the organization. How do you actually orchestrate them one after the other, or how much at what time do these testing has to be run? Now a separate team has to be set up out there, because the platform in today's date that actually offers end-to-end testing are not smart enough. They just throw the infra for you. It's the responsibility of the users to actually write that kind of a complex workflows themselves to actually make use of that infra in the most efficient manner. And this problem actually just gets worse at scale. And not just that, there's a huge investment going on. We have seen some different banks, some insurance companies for which the testing is not the core for day, but they are still forced to spend like millions of dollars in order to set up those teams in-house, in order to write that kind of a code that I can actually use the platform, which is very, very painful. And it's like not surprising that we get to see there's so many blogs out there. Next on, we're coming up with debugging nightmares. Now consider the case, let's say we are running 1,000 test cases. And if the infra and the platform is not smart enough, the logs for all these test cases are going to be scrambled inside huge log files. If anything fails, it's like a nightmare. It's like finding a needle in the haystack to actually scavenge through all these logs and then try to find that exact stack trace that correlates to a test case. It's not definitely possible at scale. If you wrote unit test cases, yes, you could get the error there itself. But the end-to-end test cases are like a very complex piece of codes. How do you debug them at scale? And that actually prevents, again, the team not to write too many test cases out there. Third is what to run and when to run. Now, the platform itself does not tell you like which test cases need to be run, right? I mean, for example, you made some changes inside the services, right? You exactly know that this particular service is only going to impact this particular feature or maybe this particular test case. Why do we even bother to run all those test cases every time? Let's say in the organization, the large scale one, I have 10,000 test cases. Why do I need to make sure that only 200 of them should be run? It should be the responsibility of the platform. So this thing is not new here. I mean, companies have been spending like millions of dollars, and they're having a huge in-house teams to actually develop these kind of solutions exactly, which they are forced to. Because, for example, we have seen that Google has open sourced multiple literatures and the blogs out there, and how they have special teams which actually make sense out of this, like which test to run, when to run, create those complex workflows. All the big engineering firms out there, in fact, in India as well, we have seen like too many companies are spending huge amount of efforts as well as money into doing these workflows, which were expected out from the platform. And finally, after you run so much data, I mean, so many test cases, the data is left out to you. The data is sent back to the customer to start making sense. Now, again, I mean, this should be the responsibility of the platform, because you have so much data. Why can't we make sense out of it? Why can't we find out the patterns? Why can't we tell like which test case is flaky, which test case is not flaky? No, exactly. And observability does not end at this level. Since the if I'm running test cases again day by day, the platform itself should be very, very smart enough to detect that the test case that is failing today was passing yesterday and the day before, and something has been done today itself. These kind of observability metrics are very, very important to the engineering teams to actually figure out what change could have led to the failure. And ultimately, if you think about it, if all the test cases are passing, nobody would bother to go and open the dashboards and look at the charts. They're only prompted to use such kind of solutions when their test case start failing. And this is where exactly where you need the support from the platform. So after thinking around all these problems and talking to multiple customers and firms, we actually started on a journey to solve this problem at the platform level. And HyperTest is an answer to this problem. And we have just got started, and we are going to change the way end-to-end testing is being done. I'll try to highlight some of the features of the hypertest, how it's actually going to help the end users, how it's actually trying to solve some of the common problems that we saw here. Now, first of all, hypertest is a YAML driven. So just like any of the CI/CDs, we asked the developers to write a YAML file. Now, the change here that we are doing is that we are asking our users and developers to just focus on writing the test cases, not running them, because that is the core fault. And writing test case itself requires so many cognitive resources, and it's like a work of art. So why bother and waste their time in doing some mundane task? So with Hypertest, now the developers are actually free to spend their time on writing the test cases and leave everything to the platform. The platform itself will make sure the test cases are being run in the as fast manner as possible out there. And all these things can be now directly created inside the YAML file as a declarative syntax. YAML is nothing new to the world. I mean, we have seen like so many tools out there already using this. Why not testing? Because we have seen that the testing tools in the platform are the most late to get these smart features out there. So you just wanted to bridge the gap, and we wanted to bring the parity across how different tools are getting used. Next is the Hypertest is going to provide ready-to-use testing infra on all major languages, all major operating systems. Uh, we have got Windows virtual machines, we have got Macintosh virtual machines, they are Docker containers. We are also bringing the support for Android and iOS emulators and simulators. And in the next quarter, we're also trying to bring the real mobile testing experience to the Hypertest. Coming on next to the actual test orchestration features, and at this point in time, we start to realize like how the platform smartly can actually solve some problems. Now, with the hypertest, one of the most basic features that we provide is called the test auto splitting. And why it's important, I'll try to explain you with an example. So let's say that we have 1,000 test cases to run, and I want to split them over 10 virtual machines, right? Now, this is like a very common exercise that in order to increase the speed, we'll just throw more infra. But that is not the answer, because if you think about it, let's say my first 100 test cases are of 1 hour each, and my rest 900 test cases just take 2 minutes each. So if you're just going to naively distribute this execution over 10 virtual machines, our first couple of machines are going to take a couple of hours, and the other virtual machines would finish their execution in a couple of minutes. Now, this is very bad. With Hypertest, Hypertest actually decides and tries to evenly distribute all your test cases dynamically every time. So and the more you run the test cases, the more smarter the platform will become. So it's not the responsibility of the developer. Developers can keep on writing their test cases, and the platform itself will make sure that it's actually dividing these test cases according to their execution time, so that the total end-to-end testing time is actually reduced. Coming on more to these features, we have automatic retries. Now, we have seen like with couple of customers that there's a very common practice that whenever any test case fails, the teams out there in the world write a code to actually retry the failed scenario in order to check that if it actually failed or what is or if it was a flaky test case. Now the problem is that this goes against the best practices, right? We have seen that the teams are going to litter their code with these kind of conditions where they're going to iteratively try out the failed test case x number of times. With hypertest, we bring out this functionality at the YAML level. You don't have to litter your code with this. You can just provide as an instruction in the YAML that we want to retry the failed scenarios up to X number of times. And the platform itself takes care of that. The problem is that even though if this functionality is available in one of the frameworks, it's highly likely that you in tomorrow, if you switch to some other language or the framework or any other testing tool, you will have to again re-implement this in your own code. And as you see in the large organizations, there's a lot of commotion. The teams that actually write the code may actually move out to different teams or maybe leave the organizations. And then those guys who are actually trying to solve that problem by themselves have to go again and again over that mundane code, which is not actually their core forte. So all these things should be automated by the platform which Hypertest is doing and across all the languages and the runtimes. And then last thing in these just orchestration feature is a smart reordering. Now, for example, in the last execution, we ran 10 test cases and 8th test case got failed. The next time as a user, when you run the test case, you're most likely interested in seeing is my 8th test cases still failing or passing. So Hypertest is going to reorder the test cases so that the next time 8th test case starts to run first, and then the following test cases will start. And Hypertest does it automatically and actively every time so that the fast feedback principle is getting fulfilled for the users. And then in order to make this platform more convenient to use, we have provided smart CI features. So we do understand that testing also requires some other background tasks in order to run. For example, first one of them is maybe preparing the test data, downloading the dependencies, or maybe compiling some binaries or any of the stuff. Now with Hypertest, since we are already providing the infra, we are creating smart CI features that can be created directly inside the YAML file so that our users can define pre-steps and the post-steps just like any other CI/CD system. We have first-class support for dependency caching. So like for all the major language runtimes, our platform is smart itself to cache the dependencies. And for some external dependencies, you can definitely tell which files you want to cache and what's the criteria of caching them. And this ensures that every time we are able to start your test execution at the fastest speed possible. More than that, we also provide smart artifact support. So if you're not using Hypertest, the way testing happens is that you trigger your test cases from your local system or maybe the CI system, and then you use a remote platform to conduct your end-to-end test cases. Now, what happens is that as a part of executing, the test scripts might generate some output. They might generate some reports, some other artifacts, for example, videos, screenshots, and anything else. With Hypertest, we provide a very convenient layer using YAML where you can clearly define what all you want, and we are going to collate this across all the 1,000 virtual machines or maybe 10,000 virtual machines that you're using. And these artifacts will be provided to you in the real time over a single place. Adding on top of it, since we are going to execute these test cases, now as a developer, you have access to the real-time logs on our platform. Before Hypertest, as a developer, in order to debug any end-to-end test cases, you have to jump between different places. First of all, you go to the platform to see a test case failing. Then you see some Selenium logs over there, or maybe APM logs over there. Then you come back to your CI pipeline to actually see the strategies and then go back. With Hypertest, since the execution happens on the platform itself, because user is not required in the execution phase, we provide the 360-degree view of all the logs that are present over there. So as a user, if you are coming here to debug any failed test case, you don't have to jump between platform. You will get exactly everything out there. And to enhance the privacy and the security of the product and the features, we are providing vault access so that you can safely define your credentials. Instead of hard coding them inside YAMLs or the source files, you can use our vault features just like any other CI/CD system. As you can see that the whole intention here is to bridge the gap between the platform and the tools that are available for software development to the testing world. And it's a step ahead that we are taking in order to make an integrated testing environment. So that testing is way more easy and it's all just about writing the test code. And after that, everything is getting taken care of automatically. Since we also have the logs, what we are doing ahead on top of this is their deep analytics and the error classification. Now, our system is going to parse the stack traces and it's going to tell you the type of the error that happened on the failed test case. So as a user, when you actually come there to debug a failed test case, before you even opening the logs file or reading them, you'll exactly know the class of error that occurred. And it's going to change the way the debugging experience is conducted right now. You don't even have to search for different pieces. You exactly know, even at the top, that what exactly is going wrong. And our system is going to improve a lot more then. And the target is to actually provide the remediation as well. So let's say your test case got failed. System is going to first of all classify them. And later on, we're also going to provide the remedies on how to fix these kind of common problems. And that actually just changes the focus all from actually writing more and more test case and worrying less about how to debug them, how to triage them, or how to run them at scale. So right now we are going to provide support for Selenium, Cypress, and Playwright, but the fabric of HyperTest is written in such a manner that it can support any other testing framework. So tomorrow, if there's a new framework out there, you don't have to worry about it. The platform actually supports you wherever you go. You can actually try to create your own framework on top of existing ones, maybe modify the existing ones or do something else. But the Hypertest as a platform is going to take care of all the end-to-end testing frameworks. And even if the support is not there right now, the platform provides very easy directives to create the support yourself. So before going on, we just wanted to show a very small excerpt of how a simple YAML could be. Obviously, this is a redacted version, but this actually helps provide the context, like what all is possible in the hypertest. So this is a very simple example of using cucumber-based testing using JavaScript. So as here, the user only tells what to run and not how to run, and they don't even run it. They just tell hypertest to do it. So hypertest comes with a CLI, and users have to download a CLI on their platform. They can use this sample YAML. So what this YAML can do here is, for example, there are some levers and knobs. We can exactly tell to hypertest that we want the maximum execution time to be 90 minutes. If anything runs more than that, then it's something wrong and you are free to abort that. Similarly, we can say that the retry on failure could be true and how many times you want to just retry that. Setting up the testing environment is the most easiest thing to do in Hypertest because I mean it's completely on the autopilot mode. You as a user only need to tell that I need to run my test case across 10 virtual machines or maybe 10 containers out there or maybe 10 emulators. Platform itself will take care, and most of the time we do promise that the inventory of the testing is going to get instantiated within a couple of seconds. We have like very sophisticated demand and supply algorithms running in the background so that most of the time when you try to hit this platform, you will get the machines already ready for you. And then you could write any kind of pre-steps and the post-steps, just like in CI/CD. And here is the crux of this. So you are the user only tells that you're using a JavaScript-based framework for Cucumber testing. You could tell us where your feature files are, and system is going to automatically discover all those test scenarios out there. And you could maybe override it. We have already created a sample YAML for more than 10 languages in the frameworks which are available out there, and we are adding more every day so that it should be the case that you don't even have to write this YAML yourself. It's created for you before even that. So we created a video to depict like what Hypertest is and how as a platform it can change the way end-to-end testing is done. I like to present that video.
Mac, we need to switch on the audio.
Sure, just give me a moment.
Fine.
Sure.
Let's face it, test execution is slow. Traditional automation testing solutions run the triggered test scenarios by sending commands in the form of HTTP calls to the Selenium hub, which in turn schedules it to be run on the best suited node. Hop after hop after hop results in increased test flakiness and slow test execution. Given the ever-increasing need for quick time to market and the complexity of web applications, the existing solutions are just too slow. Introducing HyperTest, a smart test orchestration platform to run end-to-end Selenium tests at the fastest speed possible. The HyperTest platform merges all the components into a single execution environment, thereby helping businesses achieve native-like performance on the cloud. Instead of moving the hub close to you, we are bringing the test scripts closer to the hub. Businesses can now achieve an accelerated time to market with our blazingly fast platform that offers the fastest test execution grid, smart test orchestration, and detailed execution logs. With HyperTest's proprietary features like smart auto-test splitting, matrix-based build multiplexing, auto-purging of environments after build completion, smart caching for speeding up the regression tests, you can accelerate test execution to a never-before-experienced scale. And yes, we put security at the center of everything we do at lambdaTest. Businesses will get dedicated proxy support for secure connections and end-to-end data encryption for the entire testing lifecycle. That's not all. HyperTest is available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Is available in 60-plus regions, allows real-time streaming of terminal logs, offers a completely customizable test execution environment using pre- and post scripts, gives end-to-end visibility of all test logs. Experience blazing fast test execution with HyperTest. Start testing today at hyperspeed.
Sure, thank you so much. This was the video that we wanted to present, and I'll take questions now. Thank you. Pratik, can you help us with the questions, if any?
Hey, Mike. So
Yes,
we
ma'am.
have a few questions on the chat here. There's one from Mr. 𝒂𝒚𝒂𝒏𝒌 𝑩𝒉𝒐𝒍𝒂, which is cross-browser testing possible with the solution? Can you please demonstrate?
Absolutely. So cross-browser testing is definitely possible with HyperTest. So in the we do provide cross-browser testing over Windows, Mac, and Linux. So these virtual machines are pre-packaged with all the major languages and runtimes as well as the browser versions. So yes, this is definitely possible to do on the HyperTest. We do have great documentation out there, and if you're interested, we can definitely set up a call with one of our teams to demonstrate how end-to-end testing can be done over cross browsers.
Next
Great.
is my yeah.
Go ahead, Pratik.
Okay. So next is my Monica is asking. I understand many CI, CD, and other build tools support YAML, but can we also support JSON more to avoid space, tab, or issues?
Absolutely. So on the hypertest, as a default, we do provide YAML, but you can actually use JSON, TOML, INI formats, anything out there. So YAML is like more widely accepted tool because tools out there automatically support this, and people already have some affinity to it, and that is why we wanted to go ahead with the YAML. But nothing stops us from using JSON or any other format out there. We do support more than 5 configuration frameworks in order to support this thing.
Next, we have from Amit Seni. Does hypertest help in creating logic of the test case as well? Also, in dynamic distribution of test cases across platform, can we prioritize some set as well?
So, like to answer your first question, no, because Hypertest is a platform and it's not a test authoring tool. We have created a platform so that more and more test authoring tools can be built over Hypertest, and we do support all the major languages in the runtimes and the frameworks out there. For example, more than 6 frameworks in Java and Python, Ruby, C Sharp. So everything is supported over Hypertest. And in case of dynamic distribution, so that is the crux of hypertest. You as a user, you don't need to develop anything for that. The platform itself will take care. You just focus on writing your individual test cases, and obviously the hypertest will take care of the dynamic distributions. And finally, About the prioritize, yes. So hypertext do allows in order for you to create some priorities. For example, you can say that these particular set of test cases should run first and then the other ones should run last. And obviously we can also tell to the hypertext that some set of test cases are like very deeply coupled and these tests need to only execute in order. So that kind of workflow is definitely out there possible.
That's great. Uh, Amit Sani is also asking about, like, can you please also let us know what's the data security, recovery, and backup algorithms used?
So we are using Azure backed services, and there are pretty industry standard practices that we use. The first of them is that immediately after the text execution, we are not going to save any data that belongs to the user, not their test logs. And the test logs and the telemetry data will only be available. The test scripts and other machine-related data is deleted immediately. There is no option to customly define the retention of this kind of data in the shared cloud. But in case of the private dedicated clusters or on-prem solutions, the customers have the way to define the data retention policy. And we typically use the blob storages available out there on the different platforms, notably Azure. So we do support Azure blob storage with all its default industry standard practices, just like encryption and everything out there. And regarding the backup, we do not provide backup because we immediately purge the machine data, as I just told. So there's no way to recover that data for the privacy and security reasons.
Thanks, Mayank. We have one more question from Deepak. Deepak is asking about, can you talk about how test data is managed here?
Do you mean the test input data or you mean the test results? Sort of that.
So Deepak, like, we have given a access of mic here. You can unmute your mic and you can ask the same. Although he has basically mentioned that he is mentioning for execution.
Got it. So if I understand the question correct, you want to know like how test input data is managed with the hypertest. And if that's the question, we do as a best practice, we tell to the different customers that the static data is always the best. So all the data that is might be required for running these test cases can be arranged in any simple formats. For example, JSON, XMLs, or maybe Excels. And then HyperTest provides a native ability to split this data across different virtual machines. For example, we can take an example of a shopping cart where we have a username and the password, right? So many times the problem that we have 100 test cases to run and we only have two username password combinations. So with HyperTest, we can split up the data in such a manner that one username and password is going to be run in only one of the test cases. So in that case, two virtual machines would spawn and 50 test cases would run on every single virtual machine. And at any point in time, there'll be no conflict in this. But yes, I mean, extending on this example, there you can actually statically split your data across different machines. If in case you have some dynamic requirements, for example, you dynamically want to fetch out some information from some servers for server execution, we also have a provision for that. And in that case, we go with the flow that we tell Hypertest that we need 10 virtual machines. And on every virtual machine, a custom script can run that can first of all prepare the data as we provide in the pre-steps, and then the test execution can start over there. I hope this answered your question, Deepak.
Yes, yes.
Thank
So
you.
folks, we have also allowed the mics here, access to unmute your mics. In case anyone wants to know more or want to interact with Mayank regarding any query, you can unmute your mic and can interact. Meanwhile, you have a second option available to post your quick queries in the chat box, and we can quickly take the same. So Mayank, let's wait
Hi.
for another. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Ming. Vasanti here. So just want to know, like, what kind of support would be given for the API testing and, RPA kind of thing using this hypertext.
Right. So for us, the API testing does not come under the actual end-to-end because it's ultimately based on the HTTP framework. But nothing stops you from using the API testing over Hypertest. You can actually write your scripts, and Hypertest can actually distribute them over different machines. We obviously do not have the first-class support for API testing, but I mean, we would love to know more about your use case. and get in touch with our team. So if anything can be done, we can definitely customize. Because HyperTest is built in such a modular way that we can add new support for existing framework as well as the upcoming ones very quickly. So it's highly likely that the framework that you're using for API testing can be integrated very easily with HyperTest.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
Let's wait for another 2 minutes, and if in case is there anyone who want to know more about, they can unmute their mics. They can have a word. Meanwhile, you have an option to post the same into the chat box, and we can definitely like take the questions there. Meanwhile, Mayank, you can share your email address to the folks there, so that in case they want to connect, they can connect over that.
Absolutely. In fact, we do have a very great chat support over our website. I just can provide the web page link as well.
Yes, that will definitely going to help out.
Yep. So this web page contains the information about a very brief information about HyperTest, and then obviously we'll have the link over which you can have a chat.
So folks, you can go through the same, and in case you have any queries, you can also reach out to Mank over the email address that he has shared his email address into the chats there, and you can go through that. Meanwhile, after the event, our team will definitely be going to reach out to you in order to like help you out with the answers of your queries, as well as like if you are looking to like evaluate the product and want a demo of the product there or the solution there, and wants a one-on-one meeting with the team there, we will definitely seeking your preferable time and date. So, Mayank, I believe that there is no more questions here. We are good to go. Uh, so, Mayank, thanks for your time and presentation, as well as thank you, everyone. I hope you had a productive session. Thank you. Have a great weekend ahead.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.